Renee. The most succinct and fly intro in YouTube.
Could I just tell you, I have a very, very close friend. We've been friends for like 40 years. It's my girl. And she dies because of the intro. She just thinks it's hysterical. So look,
Yeah, it just continues to work.
it does. You did a good job. You did a good job with it. You did.
And we got around the copyright.
Mm-hmm.
They let that little bit go.
They let it
slide. And
slide.
rest in peace to Dave Dove from De La Soul, who made that song known to me. No disrespect to its original creator, but without them, I would not have known to go for that. And so I think it's perfect and a nice little, to me, it's a nice little quiet tribute to De La.
I agree.
And
I agree.
Yeah, you know, so.
Now,
but how you doing, Renee? And what's up, world? Welcome to Saturdays with Renee, episode 39.
Is it really?
39.
Oh, that's
yeah. And it's wild. It's wild. 39 episodes. And
uninterrupted. We have not missed a Saturday. We pre-record if we can't go live.
Oh, wow. Now that's amazing. That part is amazing.
We have not missed a Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, please, everyone, like, share, subscribe, support our Patreon if you can. If you're so interested as we continue through these demonetized wilderness streets. There's no AI in that though. And all my bad, DC Joe Black. My bifocals betrayed me. You know, I can't see clearly unless I'm like this. So if my head is down here, it's a blur.
I refuse. I just take them off. I do like the old lady thing. If I want to see something up close, I take them off, get real close.
No, now it's a mess.
No, you got to get close, and then all of a sudden you can see it.
This is don't nobody want all that. So I'm just going to have to. Oh my good. I wasn't about never fire you up, man. I was about to just let you know that there was no AI in that in the Saturday's intro. That's all natty, as the weightlifting community says when they claim they're not on roids. It's all natural. and just for the record, if anybody is 50 and up and shredded and ripped, they're on something. So I'm just putting it out there. So I'm just saying, as a 50 and up hater of the non-dad bod, if you don't have a dad bod and you over 50, you on something.
Or maybe you just have good genes.
Don't nobody want to hear all that, Renee. Don't nobody want to hear about good dietary and exercise practices. Don't nobody want to hear about that. They just want to hear that they're cheating. Kaz is cheating. That's it. Leah's with me on that. Leah's with me on that.
But this particular situation.
Just hate until further notice. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I just couldn't. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for the bifocal thing yet. It's getting there though. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep fighting until they say you ain't got no choice. You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
See, the thing is, you have all your hair and melanin. When you lose your hair and your melanin, the ego goes pretty quick. Ain't no ego left. So there's no problem with bifocals once you've gone bald and beige. It's the bifocals is just a natural progression of the devolution of the falling apart. You know what I'm saying? It's not that deep. It's just not that deep, you know. But what these fools are up to is deep, though.
Yeah, man. And so we're gonna ask the audience and the chat to indulge us this week because I was so, what's the word for it? I don't even know if there's a word for it anymore. I was so disturbed by what happened in Utica,
Mm.
um, that I just started to like dig in some more. I went back to my spreadsheet, which I'm sorry, chat, I'm not going to share today because it's a shared file now, and I will explain the details of that um, in a little while. But I mean, the the idea. So my son is 13, as you know, you've met, and the idea that a 13-year-old would be shot point blank by police officers in the street, and that media and everybody will jump on board to try and convince the world that the 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 people in costumes with the guns didn't do anything wrong, right? I, as a mother, as a person, as an oppressed person, as an intersectional like all the things, I could not sit with this one. It really, really bothered me. And it's all the reminders, right? Tamir Rice, and I can't remember the little 9-year-old in Rochester who wasn't killed, but she was like basically tackled and handcuffed and thrown in the back of the car. Like all the things that happen to young Black, Brown, Indigenous people, right? So I'm going to ask the audience to indulge because we are really going to just go down a what the hell is going on rabbit hole today with regard to police violence and the numbers and the things that are happening. And I encourage people to, join from the chat. I'm going to do my best to pay attention. And if you have questions, but I want us to talk about this because what I really want to encourage is for people to really pay attention. And not that the folks in this chat particularly don't, but we have got to, as a community and as working people and as poor folks and as, like all the things, we have to find a way to like really like just protesting is not working. Like we have to have an actual organized plan against this system of violence and death. We really do. So
we should say trigger warnings and
yes, trigger warnings
all
and
of those
all
things.
the things. Yes, and all of the things. And I will share some of the things that I've been doing that, I'm happy to share with folks and encourage people to do, and and then we'll go from there. We're just gonna roll with it today because there's a lot. There was just so much in that one. I don't know if you even looked behind at the data in the map and police violence.
I did look through some of it.
Wild.
In fact, and it's
wild.
And in fact, to note, as I did, that Maryland per capita has a pretty high rate relative to the rest of the country and Maine, which my youngest described, she said the people of Maine should be called maniacs.
Really?
And in this case, they really should be. The police up there killing by per capita. And we went up, we just real quick, a couple Mother's Days ago, my wife had always wanted to go to Maine for whatever reason, had never been to Maine. So we just drove up to Maine.
I mean, Maine's pretty.
But it's also really poor and more diverse than I realized. There's a lot of poverty, inequality, and more diversity. So
I find that places that are
surprised,
are tourist places, touristy, tend to be like that. It's Maine gets flooded in the summertime and in the wintertime with people who want to eat lobster and all the things. So,
Yeah.
so just
where
very
did you?
quickly, this
Yeah, sorry. Go,
question came up. This is going to be part of the conversation once again. I saw that you wrote again. Give us a second. But yes, this will be part of the conversation. Oops.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, so do you want to, why don't we start with this story in Utica, just because this was what kicked off my brain with this situation.
So again, all the warnings. You want me to start with this breakthrough news video?
Yeah, we can do that.
June 28th, police in Utica, New York, harassed, chased down, assaulted, and then executed 13-year-old iMWiL, a member of the Karen refugee community. Naya and a friend were stopped and encircled by 3 police officers with flashlights. Naya ran in fear and police subdued him to the ground and then shot and killed him. Community members have responded with vigils and protests and even shut down a press conference put on by the city, whereby the chief of police attempted to justify the actions of the police. As a result of racist stop and frisk policies that are being rebranded and re-implemented in cities and towns all throughout the U.S. targeting oppressed communities, there has been a corresponding uptick in police murders, with 645 people killed by police in 2024 alone, a rate of 3.5 people per day. On Friday, June 20.
And that was 6:56 by the time I did the thumbnail for this episode, and probably more.
And in, I think, throughout the month of May and thus far in the month of June, there has not been one day where someone was not killed by the police in one method or another. And so there has to be some way of really making, because I don't want to say people are ignorant of it, because I think in some ways people know, but I also think a lot of people only understand what happens when it makes like the news, right? Like when it makes mainstream news, not just when it makes the local news, like something that hits like the AP, or maybe not even that. Like I don't watch mainstream media, so I'm probably a bad person to guess at this, but I just feel like there's so many stories and it's so hard. It's very hard to keep up with. And if you're a regular person just trying to like get through your day, right? Like who's going to Mapp and Police Violence to check it out on a regular basis to see like, what's actually happening, and by the time people even catch news of the biggest story, it's because it took 2 years for the police to get sued and to releasing the evidence and the information and, all these things. But this website, folks, if you are not going to this website just to get the overwhelming understanding of what is happening in this country, you are vastly missing out on some real information. Because I would bet money if you asked 10 people on the street, like how many people have been killed by the police thus far this year, most people would not guess that it was almost 700. We're not even halfway through the year.
And again, this is just what the police are doing. So this is because I think I'll speak for myself. There's sometimes a tendency when I look at this to confuse the number with just the overall amount of homicides, and which I don't know why I do that, but just in case anyone else is tempted when they see these numbers, this is just specifically what the police have done in the pursuance of their quote unquote duty.
Right.
And that
that
Native
number,
Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders get the most per capita is
mhm,
a little surprising too.
mhm. And that number, like if you pull up the actual like data set behind the site, which also makes it, I mean, I saw an interview with the person who started this website, and I apologize, I cannot remember his name. Um, and they just do a phenomenal job of trying. Y'all know I love a spreadsheet and this data set and the way they maintain it. But that number isn't even accurate today because the data set ends last week. So we've got another week to go that needs to be added. And then, you know, I'm sure the numbers will change again. Um, so, you know, it's just, it's, I don't, you know, Leah makes a good point. She says, I think people are ignorant to what is really going on. They think Project 2025 is an altered being, and I think he meant already, isn't already being implemented under Biden. It's ridiculous. And that is correct. I mean, and this is what we talked about a few weeks ago when Geechee was on, even though Geechee forgot that we had this conversation, that, you know, all these things that people are fearful of, you know, the fascism and the police and all these things that are going to change, they're already happening. It's literally already happening. And I think I think it would make the most sense, and honestly, in all honesty, I think it would make the most sense for people to start looking in their own neighborhood and their community, then span out to their state so that they can at least be aware of what's happening, because it is likely closer to you than most people even think. You know, and me having grown up in Brooklyn, none of this is shocking to me, right? I mean, I think I told the story that when I was 6, my uncle was killed by the police. So it's as personal as it can get, you know? And but I just think that people really don't have time. They don't have time. We have a question. Yes, they count people hitting, they count when police, that police killing number includes any incident which resulted in death that involved a police officer. So if you go to the spreadsheet, you'll see that it also it explains, like, the death was because of a vehicle, gunshot. It explains the reason when you look in that table that they have behind the website. So I think people should be digging in, because I do think, yes, thank you, Hiram. Sam Singyawe, who I saw interview about when he started this whole background with the mapping of police violence. I wish I could remember which interview I saw him do. But obviously, and hopefully he has some help, because I can tell you, as a person who has a spreadsheet going, that it literally is overwhelming to try and keep up with the information. On the other side of what happens is the propaganda that follows. So the situation in Utica was rapid fire responded to by media with excuses for why the police felt like they were in danger and why they had to respond the way they did. They're on leave. One article I read actually complained about the officer getting doxxed because his name was released to the public. So there are two articles I included in our run sheet, and one gives kind of a brief, you know, here's what we know so far, right? And it explains that there had been a call that went out regarding, I guess, stick ups or something to that effect. That the police were responding to that call, that in the process of their response, they encountered the two boys on the street. They stopped them. One ran away. They claim that he pointed a gun at the officers, and then that was why it resulted in in his murder. The gun that they claim they found on him was a pellet gun. It was not an actual firearm. They claim it was in his hand. I guess we'll see. But the Syracuse paper, which I think is the second one.
I mean, but this even here claims that a witness says that the officer shot the boy after the boy had been thrown to the ground.
Exactly.
And been punched. Yep. And then the person asks, they don't really have to take out their guns and shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
So that suggests, again, admittedly in a quick one-time read, that the officer took the gun out and shot him after he was already knocked down to the ground.
So if I understand what I read correctly, there was one officer who had him down on the ground, and it was another officer who shot him. Now, I may have misread somewhere, but I feel like that's what happened. But the other article has like a timeline, like, you know, at this time, at this time, at this time. And when you pull that one up, if you scroll down to where like the time is actually posted for what happened, you can literally count how many seconds it took for them to decide that this little 13-year-old boy wasn't worth, like, I don't know, breathing, because it's at 49 seconds that he's on the ground. And at 54, they're struggling on the ground, which is 5 seconds later. And then the other officer runs up while they're struggling. And it is about 9 seconds later when he shoots him. So we're not talking about, you know, I'm trying to find a way to explain this where, because there's no justification in my opinion, right? There's no reason for this to be the end result of this situation. But we're not talking about two grown men fighting on the floor for minutes and they can't get him to whatever excuses they normally use, right? We're talking about a 13-year-old child who has already been tackled to the ground by a grown adult man. And then another grown adult man runs up, and within 9 seconds, and I mean 9 seconds is not a long time, he doesn't wait for him to be restrained. I mean, to me, this all adds up to, we don't care about this child's life. And we know we have the excuse of, oh, our life was in danger. And that's it.
I'm just not. I'm just trying to look at the video real quick. I don't know if we want to share it. What they have in this.
In the one that's in the article.
Yeah. And
I feel like it's very unclear, this whole.
It's not clear at all, because the question that I'm having is, you just see him take off and run. He's standing there, the cops are surrounding him, and then you see the boy run. And then the video, there's an edit to where they see the boy, they show you a still shot of the boy holding a gun or holding something. And then I wouldn't say it's clear it's a gun, but they've said it's a pellet gun or whatever. But and then you see him on the ground being punched by one officer. So how does that result in the other officer, even if he had a weapon at the point, I don't know if we want to show the video, but at the point you see where they cut it just before he's shot, he's being straddled by a bigger cop and punched. So where's the threat? It almost seems like you put your fellow officer in more danger by shooting the guy, shooting the kid. Then
after,
and the video's not clear, because the video, the timeline we just read says that you see him run, then he turns and points a gun, what looks like a gun, but the video is edited. The video does not.
Right.
The video does not clearly. The video is edited to give you a still shot of him holding what could be, or allegedly is, this pellet gun. But how then but they don't show you from there how you end up with the other cop on top of him, straddling him, punching him.
Right.
So if someone turns and points what you think is a gun at them, and you have a gun and a license to kill them, why would you then pursue them to the point where you're on top of them, punching them, and not shoot them right then? And then why would that necessitate, once you get to that level, why then is the other cop justified in showing up and shooting the kid?
Right. And we discuss all the time, and Matthew, we still have to figure out a way to show Matthew's documentary on here. I don't know, maybe we'll do like a Saturdays with Renee special one another night.
Lisa is saying give a warning and share the video.
Okay, we can do that. Do you want to? Well, why don't we do that, and then I'll explain what I was about to explain.
So here's the warning. Take a minute. It's going to take me a quick second to get it, but take a second, and if you need to, just 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and I'm going to push play now. So if you need to, step away. And then, as it says here, the video contains graphic content. Viewer discretion is advised. I don't think we need to play the full 344. Here's where the video starts in terms of the police body cam.
The reason why we're stopping, keep your hands out of your pockets. The reason why we're stopping is you're riding in the roadway and you're walking. Oh shit, I forgot about that. Me, you forgot about that. Like, he was just having fun. Like, he was living over there. Did I just pat you down and make sure you got no weapons on you? I'm running.
See how they do that? And the next thing we see, somebody's on top of them.
Careful! Careful! Yo! Careful! You're on camera! Yo!
You see him punch. And then here comes the other cop, and that's where the shot occurs. So,
right. And in all likelihood, let's say this situation with this pellet gun is reality. I mean, he probably ran because he didn't want to get searched and get in have something bad happen because he had a toy gun in his pocket. If that's the case, that that's actually what he had. But that whole situation screams of, again, people who have no intention of doing the job that media and everyone purports that they do via propaganda. Because if it's really about safety and community and all these things, then none of this happens, right? Why are teenage children being stopped by multiple police officers because they're walking in the wrong place? Because according to the video, that's what started it. And then they came back with this. There had been reports of stick-ups in the area, right? So now they circle back with this added excuse for why they had to stop these children. And why are you searching people who are just walking down the street? Like, what is the stop and frisk business that that supposedly, like, we had gotten away from after, 1 million plus brown and black children in New York City were held by police officers against their rights? Like, none of this screams a situation that actually needed to result in a child losing their life. I got JAB speechless.
I mean, because there's nothing appropriate to say that won't get us further copyright banned or whatever the hell on this platform. I mean, it's and I honestly don't know exactly what to do in terms of what precise policy or effort we should advocate or should be advocated. And I don't know, and then I even find myself being drawn in this moment to the very conservative immediate reactions that include who is buying pellet guns that look like Glocks for world majority kids to play with in the street. And I admit that's a conservative. I'm not proud that I'm having that reaction, but that is one of the first thoughts that I was having. But even when someone is sitting there on camera yelling, "Be careful, you're on camera."
And it didn't stop anything.
Not a damn thing.
But they've all learned that being caught on camera murdering people doesn't necessarily result in anything bad happening. Because the first thing they do is cry, fear for their life. So this circles me back to Matt's documentary and why we got to figure out a way to show it.
And by the way, Lou, sorry, Renee. No, Lou, I appreciate, or I'm sorry, Anthony. I'll come back to that. Lou, when Lou says I don't think it's all conservative, to be honest, it's wondering why parents aren't using good freaking sense. The reason I'm saying it's a conservative reaction is because it's generally, by my understanding, conservative to start an analysis with the behavior of individual behavior of anybody, even the police, to be honest. I actually think it's to focus on the individual choices of an individual officer is itself to begin in some degree of conservatism. So I only mean to say that, look, I agree. Like, I do fundamentally agree that there's some parenting choices and all kinds of things we could ask and raise. But the real problem is not that the parents allowed this toy gun to be given to their son, or however the kid got. I don't even know that that's what happened. That's not ultimately the problem. So in some way, I'm admitting what I'm working through here is I'm admitting what is often encouraged to all of us, that we begin with, like my godfather, remember, who's now in his 80s, black man in DC, said, he got at one point in his 70s, you see this old black man getting hauled off by the police over a headlight out, or a license expired, something trivial, motor vehicle related. And he said when he came home from a night in jail, his neighbor's first question was, "What did you do?" And that in and of itself is what I'm pointing to, is the imposed conservative condition that colonialism generates, where the question shouldn't be, what did you do? The question should be, begin with, what right does anybody have to empower a police force to do this? If it then becomes determined that what that force did is somehow, quote unquote, justified, then so be it. But the starting point shouldn't be, what did so-and-so do? The starting point should be, why would it end up in a situation where the police force did this? And the structure should be. So that's what I'm trying to say. And I'm acknowledging that when I'm having that question, that when I'm watching the video, one of my first thoughts is, who is letting this kid outside? First of all, why is the kid outside? But I'm trying to work through that. This is what I think is an encouraged response. And the response shouldn't be, why should it be a problem for a 13-year-old to be outside, even if it is dark out? Why should it be a problem for a 13-year-old to have a pellet gun? Or maybe the question should then be, what kind of violent society encourages guns to be toys and replica Glocks to be toys? What is that preparing them for? And so on and so on. But I think you all got me. I think you get one.
But and it's a valid point. And again, as a parent, the toy gun thing was a major issue in my house, right? I'm not listen, people who like guns and own guns, and I don't take issue with it. It's just not my thing, right? And so in our house, we don't do like the shooting games, and he's a little older now, so he'll have a little more freedom to choose those things, but he's not even really into the whole like shooting game thing. And it took years of him begging for a Nerf gun, years, because Tamir Rice was playing in my head over and over and over and over and over again. And as a parent, the one thing I can confirm as a parent is the idea that something you did in any way, shape, or form led to the death of your child. Right. Whether it was intentional, non-intentional, because in all honesty, he could have had a cell phone in his hand, and I would still be like, I bought him the cell phone, right? It could be anything.
I bought him the hoodie he was wearing.
Right.
All of that.
I sent him to the store. I let him go out with his friends. Like anything, right? And so it is a hard reality in this country specifically with regard to dealing with these people in costumes with guns and your children. Because once you release them, you really can't control what happens once they're out of your sight. And sometimes when they're in your sight, right? Like, so it's for me, and maybe it's different because you have girls, right? So it might be like the whole like gun fighting, shooting thing might not have really been even an
it never
in your house,
it didn't,
right?
It didn't. but part of it would have been by design. We wouldn't have gotten any of the kind of shooting guns and all. We would have done something similar. We did do something similar. And the official rule of the house is that there be no guns of any kind in the house. And that's the official stated rule of the house. Right. So, and as far as my girls are aware, that rule has been 100% adhered to. They wouldn't even be aware. But the flip side is, well, I did defer to my wife on most everything, but this as well. The flip side is I would have wanted a little more involvement and training. I would have, but again, I don't think, but none of that has anything to do with any of this. I just think that we have encouraged a zone of peace per se in this house. With the idea that there be no, right, as much as possible. So yeah. Right. And I have encouraged, especially as they've gotten older, we've had serious conversations about how I would want my daughters to behave and would want them to encourage others around them to behave when they are forced in particular moments to engage, if at all, the police. So, so we have gone over that, and with the expectation, admittedly, that they are, as has already been the case, they're going to be in cars and spaces with Black and brown men, Black and brown collectives, African diaspora collectives, and that people should be very aware, and that they should make sure they're surrounded by people who are clear what they're getting involved with. And then we even had to talk about it in terms of class. So I said, there's a tendency out here in some of these suburbs to have a certain sort of aggressiveness towards the police, that people out here think they can get away with things, and then they travel and take that idea with them. And to the extent that it's possible, and I don't know that it really is, to get away with certain things out here in these counties that you can't get away with in certain other areas, we go to other areas. So be aware of where you are and act accordingly, because, and again, I defer exactly. All I want is for just make sure you get back here. That's really it. So whatever, and it's just layers of trauma. That's all. That's what I feel myself talking through as we're going through this. That's all.
Because it really is. It really and truly is.
And what does this mean, Hiram, that your mother had the conversation?
You have to. It started. You have to go up.
Oh, I missed it.
He shared some history.
Oh, okay. My bad. I missed. Because I can't just be staying in the chat like that. You know what I mean? It gets distracting.
It is. It's hard. I'm trying though. I'm making an effort today.
Random at time stay with me every time. Pull cops a gun on me. First time being when I was 15. Last time when I was 34. God damn, Hiram.
Right. And the previous one that I starred is him explaining. Right.
Did you start? I don't see the stars. They're not starred.
I thought I did. Oh, is it only starred for me? Is that how this works?
If you're doing it in YouTube, it is. You have to start in the studio. No,
I'm
the
in
StreamYard
studio. It's starred in the studio for me.
No.
Weird.
Not on mine. Are we in the same studio?
No, I can't see it.
Yeah, no, yeah. Fortunately, I haven't had that.
Maybe it's because it's you, because I can see the ones that you starred. Maybe it's because I started.
But you should have you have the same. You're in the studio like I'm in the studio. We have the same access.
I hear you, but
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
You
know.
can't see my stars.
I can't see your stars. That's crazy.
Um,
God damn. Musa, I saw my uncle beaten by the pigs when I was 5. Since then, I've always known. See, all my stuff was delivered indirectly. You know, my mother was quick to talk about the pigs and the fuzz. I don't know why that was the term. And
that was the term on TV, wasn't it? The fuzz.
Honestly, I'm not. But she would. The only story I really had is that when I was a little kid, she got pulled over, and she used that term in front of the cop, and things didn't go well. In addition to them making note of her black kid in the car, and it was kind of like one of those white treachery moments. You know, like you've betrayed the race with your little afroed up baby in the back. Yeah, not said it wasn't conveyed. I don't remember the exact language. It wasn't said in this kind of. It was less. It was more covert than that. But that was the vibe that she took away from it. And I trust whites to know whites.
Right.
So I trust that she picked up on whatever he was putting down, as they used to say. Oh wait, pigs have a fuzz hair. Is that where that comes from? That's deep. That's deep. Okay.
Interesting.
What's up, Latif? It's good to meet the remixers in person, man. Every once in a while.
Yes.
Latif all-star, as they say. You know, so shout out and thanks for the clarification.
It's interesting because you only have the one story, and I feel like I have 8,000 of them. Maybe it's because I grew up in what's now called Little Caribbean.
No, maybe.
You know, like my literal first memory of interacting with a police officer is a cop who was abusing a dude on the street, and it was a few months after my uncle was killed, and my mother stopped and she was like, "What are you doing? And why are you doing it? And what's your badge number? And you need to stop." And that's literally the first time I can remember being in the presence of one of them. And there's 1,000 stories from then on of cops in the train station, or cops stopping us even though we paid the toll, and cops on the train eyeballing you, or like my friends getting harassed, my brother getting his head smashed against the car when he got pulled over, and us all going to the police station. Like that, I mean, literally, I have countless stories.
No, I didn't have any problems until I till they started anresting me. That was the only problems that I had ever had. But in all honesty, that's why like anecdotals. That's why anecdotes are not always sound, because anecdotally, my interaction with police has been mild. Even with black friends, even when identified overtly myself as black, it's been relatively certainly mild. So, you know.
I don't know. So, all right. So we got like an hour left. So a few solution focused things. So I already said that I think people should be making an effort to pay attention to what's happening in their own communities, their own districts, their own states, etc. Even if it's just to be aware. If you think you don't have time to organize and do anything besides be aware, you should make yourself aware, right? Because it's unlikely that anyone is living so far removed from something that there isn't, a thing that they should make themselves aware of. For me, one of the things that I've been very, very invested in, and it's been a real experience for me. And I don't know, maybe I'll try and see if somebody will come on with me. They're a little they're a little shy, but we'll see. So, I've been running these abolition workshops, not me running them. There's the team of us working on them. And the goal is to put together like a series of conversations that people can have within their own communities and organizations regarding like understanding what policing is actually about, right? Like getting away from this nonsensical idea that, they're here to serve and protect, and, they're here to help, and it's public safety, and all the stuff that you get sold. And I would encourage people to consider having these conversations, even if it's just you and a few neighbors having these conversations, because our biggest downfall is being unaware. Just taking the media at face value, right? And trusting that the news is telling you the things that that you really need to know. And really taking the time and investing the energy into having these conversations where people can not be propagandized or propagandized, right, by the stories that you're told about what policing is. Because to me, I still think a major key and a major lesson in this is knowing, right? Like literally figuring out that almost everything you watch gives you a presentation of either police being the good guys or super helpful, or, these human people who just want to help and just want to take care of their communities, or, that there are a few bad apples, but there's still these good guys and these humans that are trying to, trying to lead the way and do something to prevent the bad apples from taking over. And none of it truly equates to the fact that the whole orchard is rotten from the ground to the core, in the air, in the water, whatever feeds the orchard, the whole thing is rotten to the core. And so I think until there is a major effort to get people in general to understand that their belief about policing and their knowledge about the history of policing, the information that they're given about police, how the media supports police, as Daruba says, with the associations, that they're not actual unions, like all these things that play into these false narratives about what these people in costumes with guns really are. That has to be part of the process. So I first and foremost want to encourage people to have those conversations and to engage in those conversations and to attempt others to engage in those conversations. And I have 8,000, things about the history of policing, and if people want them, like I got a ton of it if people are interested, because that's, I think, where it has to start. Because in the end, part of the major problem is that most people believe what they're told about police. And once you believe the propaganda, everything else, like it's hard to get to anything else. Because once you think police are there to be helpful, you don't see how unhelpful they actually are. right? If you think police are there to prevent crimes, you don't see that there is no study on earth that has ever made any literal correlation between more cops and less crime. If you think that they are there to, solve crimes, you don't know that there is actual, reports and historical reference and studies that show that they don't do that either, right? Um, so I think it's really critical that we start with those conversations and gaining that knowledge and supporting giving other people that knowledge in any way you can, because people just don't. I really just feel like people just don't know. They just don't know.
No, absolutely. And just going back to I saw Musa and was it James? Now I can't remember, talking about the pig metaphor. And I do remember Emory Douglas talking about this. So I'll just share this very quickly. Where this was the first, I believe this is the first from 1969, where they depicted you started using the pig art, a low-natured beast that has no regard for law, justice, or the rights of people, a creature that bites the hand that feeds it, a foul, depraved traducer, usually found masquerading as the victim of an unprovoked attack. And I remember years ago, the only real run-in with, and this is I'm over exaggerating on purpose, so all puns intended. My only real run-in with the white left years ago, I was invited to give a presentation, and I made reference to something like this: the Douglas, the Black Panther use of art and the depiction of police as pigs, and a white leftist came up to me afterwards and suggested that it was inappropriate to refer to police as pigs because it was disrespectful to the pig and to animals who should be more respected. And it was an interesting back and forth that we had, brief as it was, but I always remember that when I come back to that, and I was like, man, and I'm a vegan, you know what I mean? I'm a vegan. I'm all for, and I respect even the intelligence of pigs in particular, whatever. But I was like, come on, man, you got to get out of here. And I remember suggesting that I was like, just tactically, you shouldn't engage particularly Black radical activists with this line of argument. It's not gonna build the unity that you look for. But anyway, so yeah, I didn't mean to, I just wanted to raise this up. And this is a little bit of an interview with Emory Douglas talking about how he and Huey evolved the use of the pig metaphor and how it should be drawn and whatnot. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. So there was a question in the chat.
Which, are we to be lawless?
I mean, they already are. They don't follow no laws. They're not restrained by nothing. I'm really curious. What is this like? What is this place where, like, the law is responsible for people's being able to live in peace and get the resources they need, and like I just I can't, like, this idea that you can't have a society where you are not traumatized by people in costumes and guns who are only there to ensure capitalism and profit for the owners and the wealthy. I can't be on board with that. Like, I ain't got no space for that in my head, that's like a reasonable, it's lawless now. Like, what do these people in costumes with guns do to prevent anything from happening to regular working people, when so many of the things that happen to regular working people are the result of the people in costumes with guns? Like, what are we talking about right now?
And a shameless plug, but and I keep coming back to it. But this book from like 20 years ago by Laura Nader, Plunder, and you can hear her presentation. It's on the channel, talking about this book that she did with Ugo Matai, which talks about the history of the rule of law. And to your point, and to the point, as I understand of the question, what they are talking about, what they argue and show, is that the rule of law, even as a phrase, is associated with European imperialism. That you conquer a territory and you establish a rule of law which makes legal and legitimate your exploitation of the land and the people. And then by extension, this is my argument now, the police become a part of that. So specific to that question, whether it's Dr. King's argument that we should not abide in unjust law, or whether, what's her name, Sarah, who talked about women in particular becoming broken machines because they have been defined as machines in this society, so they should become broken machines. Like that, we should be lawless in the sense that we are rejecting the rules of law as they've been established solely to support this level of exploitation and monopoly of violence. It could also be argued, as it has been by others, that we are already lawless in any endeavor that we might engage that seeks to be free, that seeks liberation. So ungovernable, yes, Manny, exactly. We should be ungovernable.
It's a great word. It's a great word, Manny. I love that word.
Mm-hmm.
So another solution, something else that I think people could consider doing, and I did this in Jersey last summer, and I'm actually part of a group that's putting together a weekend-long conference on cop cities. And so one of the things that I did last summer was that documentary. I just realized I keep starting to talk about it and I keep forgetting and losing my place. One of the things the documentary does very well, and I'm speaking of Matthew Solomon's documentary, Reimagining Safety, is it breaks down via a resigned police officer what the training actually is about, right? And what they're actually trained to do. And we did a whole piece on that report when it came out in New Jersey, when they discovered what those private training sessions were actually about. But this documentary,
that was crazy.
But this documentary I found to be a really, really well done, detailed breakdown of not just what police are trained to do, but about what community members can do in order to not engage police officers in their communities, right? And one of the major things that I find disturbing when I read reports of someone who has been unalived is that community members are still calling people in costumes with guns to their houses to deal with issues that do not require a person with a costume and a gun. Right? Like, if you have someone who is having a mental health issue, why are you bringing someone with a costume and a gun into that situation? Because the majority of times, it does not have a good result. So why are we not engaging family or community solutions to help in these situations so that you do not have to bring someone in who is a hammer and sees everything as a nail. There are other options. There are multiple cities that have incorporated organizations to help with these situations. So if you are a person who is so inclined, one of the things you could do is research what communities are doing with regard to helping those with mental health issues and incorporating alternate solutions so that when people in a community have an issue, there is someone that you can bring to help who is not going to come wearing a costume and holding a gun and ready to shoot everybody because they're fearful of their life. And I think that is a really valid method of moving forward within a community. One of the things that struck me most in that documentary is, and I don't remember her name, but she spoke about, you know, why people feel the need to police their neighbors. Like, why are you calling the police if your neighbor's music is too loud? Or why are you calling the police if the kids are making too much noise outside? Like, why are you bringing...
Well, one answer that always comes up to that last example, I just forgive the interruption, Renee, is that because those kids threaten violence. That's why. And on some level, now this is interesting, given where we were at the time and how it. I don't want to do too much. We had a minor situation like this some years ago where our immediate neighbor in the townhouse next door had a son who was getting older and more rambunctious and ran with a wild crew that would often hang out back and in front and wherever. And they would make the block hot. Before weed was legal, they would sit out in front of the thing and smoke all the weed, and they would be loud to all hours of the night. And and when approached, the attempt was to convey a level of hostility. And we had household conversations. If I go outside, as I did, and speak to them, as I did, what possible ramifications of that could there be for us, our family, our own children, et cetera, and so forth? And we were committed to not calling the police, and we did not. But that did not come without certain levels of risk and a willingness, an ability, a desire to overcome fear, tension, potential indirect threats, et cetera, and so forth. So this is why I keep coming back to, we need collectives, organization. We need to not make this based on individual choice and decision, because most, I think with reason, are not able to individually overcome that, or are not in a situation where they're maybe as, I don't know, maybe fortunate as I was, that this particular crew wasn't, although what ended up happening with them, it proves that they were in cases happy to be over. And one of them is still, I think he's going to be in prison forever. But the point is that elsewhere, they were clearly willing to elevate and escalate. Anyway, I don't know. I hope I'm making sense here, but I'm with you, and we demonstrated in that example the politics of not calling the police, but it was not easy. It would have been nice to be able to call some other entity to say, could you please deal with this? Because I don't want to have to deal with this. We may not be equipped to deal with this and all of the reverberating consequences, potential as they were. So sorry for that again. But
no, don't be sorry, because it's a reasonable and Anthony brings up that there was years of noise in the tenement and someone got killed. Like, bringing the police into that situation doesn't prevent anyone from
Yeah, I mean,
possibly
that's
being
wild,
killed, right?
Neighbors
Like,
killing neighbors, yeah.
but they're also, you're reading this story from the
God damn.
media, right? Based on whatever story was told. You don't know you don't know. You don't know what interactions were happening between those neighbors prior to that incident. All you know is what the media told you. So this is a vast assumption that you know the full story based on whatever the media portrayed the story to be. If you don't live in that tenement and you don't know, there could have been all kinds of things behind that. And perhaps if people were neighbors and actually talked to each other and had community conversations and engaged in opportunities to deal with things on a neighbor to neighbor level, you don't have to bring in people with costumes wielding guns to kill your neighbor so that your neighbor doesn't kill you because you think you have an issue. So, again, he's like, and this is why Anthony on my YouTube is blocked, because these conversations are hard to engage in. Like, his response is both families lost loved ones. What does the police change in that is my question. Nothing. What potentially actually changes that situation is an actual community engagement between people who learn to trust and talk to each other instead of violence, calling people with costumes and guns. Like, that's my point.
But there's also no institutional protection, legal protection for one neighbor to have a monopoly of violence against the other, with an entire legal structure, an entire propaganda apparatus, an entire even fake union apparatus to protect one neighbor from killing the other over and over and over again. So in other words, the likelihood that that one neighbor that killed the other would stay in that neighborhood and continue to routinely over years, to the tune of hundreds per year, kill other neighbors with impunity is not as likely. So this is again one of the fundamental problems I have with the comparisons between an individual citizen and the levels of killings there, and in other words, black on black crime, and the comparisons between that and the police. These are not, it's not the same thing, even if in this one instance, as Anthony can point out, the end result is the same or similar. The process by which we got there is, to me, the bigger problem.
Right. I agree. And I'll note for the record, Anthony D, that you are blocked on my personal YouTube because I just don't want to be bothered. But as a host, you're not blocked. You're free to say whatever you want, just as I'm free to disregard and counter your arguments. Because again, the point is not about, we are living in a society that is literally creating all of this angst amongst people so that the people who profit don't have to share their profit. If we're busy arguing with each other and arguing and fighting and shooting, all the things like fighting for resources and scrapping for every little bit of crumbs we can get and trying to like step on one person to get a little bit ahead of the next person, like all these things, and resources aren't shared, then this becomes part of the larger problem. So there has to be a point in which people are willing to step back and say, I am not going to call 911 because I have a social issue with my neighbor. Period.
I might have missed it, but Jab, did you embrace those that were causing problems? If you're talking about my little story, no, I wouldn't say embrace. I would just go outside and politely ask them to not make as much noise, I would go over to the weed spot crew and you know, like, look, I obviously have no problem with the smoking, but there's a difference between smoking and a crew gathered creating a block, like literally the block smelled. I mean, you know, like you got kids playing, like, and I'm a smoker, but I don't want, even I would want my kids to be able to go outside and not be inundated. And I'm talking about broad daylight. I'm talking about Saturday afternoon, noon on you know, like in the, like again, for Saturday afternoon, noon, like sitting out there I'm not talking about 2 a.m, which is itself a problem given the noise. So no, it wasn't an embrace per se, but it was an attempt to say, and I don't know what exact words I was using, but it was an attempt to convey, listen, I'm not the one calling the police. Neighbors around here will call the police. In fact, that is something that I would say to them. Like, there's a whole neighborhood here. I'm coming out here to let you know that you're clearly bothering the neighborhood. I'm not calling the police on you, but you are bothering us. There will be somebody around here that will call the police, and then we're going to have a whole, as eventually did end up happening, a whole block flooded of police causing problems, to me, causing problems, and to their parents causing problems, as they took the whole door off the hinges and traumatized my children in the process. So, but what I'm saying is that, so yeah, it was an attempt to say, can we work something out here where I'm not calling the police, but you're not being this level of a disturbance. And again, there was this tension, and you know, there was nobody did craziness, nobody, you know, threatened over, but there's that vibe of, if you continue this will escalate into something negative. And it took, I got to be real, I had to talk to my wife about potential consequences. I had to have my little, you know, the little look in the mirror, locker room pep talk to myself. You know what I'm saying? Do some push-ups real quick, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And walk out there and have some different, you know what I mean? And look a bunch of youngsters in the eye, you know, in the middle of the night and say, yo. But again, to your point, and part of it was, I'm consciously trying to live a politic here.
Right.
And you know,
And it ain't easy. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. But this is what I do know. I never want to be on the end of a 911 call that results in someone else losing their life. Or me losing my life, because that also happens, right? People call 911 because they need help, and then they end up getting harmed. So, you know, to me, again, this has to be conversation, education, and gained understanding of what is truly happening. And let's stop like playing around and pretending or going along with this narrative that police are here to help. They're here to help capitalism, right? They're here to help the owners. They're here to help the businesses and the corporations. They ain't here to help us. And the sooner that people, the sooner and I don't even know what a good word is. Like, the sooner people become aware of that, to me, the better.
Yeah, the issue, again, where I'm at with it is like with a lot of things right now. We are in, you know, it's the crisis more than ever is not a baseline quote awareness. It's the interpretation of the problem and what to do about it. So, and that's where, as we've already talked a little bit about today and other times, the role of propaganda is so powerful. The role of framing, when we see things like even KRS siding up with Eric Adams, and when we see all the things we've seen, the the 13th documentary I was just talking about again recently from Ava DuVernay and others. Like, there's so much discussion of these problems, but in ways that walk people back to non-conclusions, non-solutions rather. And that's the so even with the example that came up today, trying to convince people not to call the police, trying to even get potential, even trying to get the ones potentially creating the situation that would invite the police to the space to recognize how that not even necessarily what they're doing is wrong. So for instance, with the example I was giving, I was trying to convey to them that I don't have a problem with you gathering outside on a nice Saturday afternoon to smoke weed. So I don't want to convey that I'm suggesting you in an endeavor to do that are a problem. Maybe the age, 16 to 18-year-olds, maybe we could find some better things for you to do, even as a proponent of the cannabis. Okay, but I'm not trying to condemn you for your behavior. I am trying to alert you to the ramifications of it in this context, in a way that invites you to see the broader problem or that context itself, without getting into a whole, hey fellas, we're colonized and the police are playing a role here conversation that for me never works. But to say, I don't have a problem with what you're doing, but recognize that how and where and the timing of how you're doing it in the context with some of these neighbors that you're doing it invites problems that we can avoid if you would, for instance, just move right over there without it deteriorating into who the fuck is you and get the fuck out of my face and fuck you and all of that.
Because it is a legitimate, this could happen. And, not for nothing.
And when I was their age, that might have been my reaction.
Exactly. I was
in
just
fact,
about to say.
I have to take might out of it. I have to take might out of it because there were actual occasions.
Literally,
where I was that dude and I was the one saying, you better get the fuck up out of here.
Right.
But then they call the police.
Right. And so my question is, right, like, and this is, I guess, in part for you, but also just a general question. Like, how many attempts were there to have conversations with these children outside of when they were outside causing a havoc?
Oh, it was ongoing. So it was, there's at least three, maybe four I can come up with out of the top of my head. There were several.
No, I mean beyond.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
like
I'm sorry.
Outside
I'm
of
sorry.
when
Yeah,
you had to go
I'm sorry.
outside and say like, yo, I don't have a problem with this, whatever. Right? Like, were there attempts to engage those young people when they weren't causing a hassle?
Oh, so in fact, yeah. So I did actually. And in fact, so I had started at one point. I wanted to do I still would like to do it. I just haven't followed through. I wanted to do a project on Columbia, Maryland. And my project was, part of what I wanted to do with this was, it was billed as this utopian planned city, did not live up to it. And I wanted to conduct, at least in part, surveys among young people, well, really anybody, but primarily young people, to basically ask about their experience, young Black and brown people in particular, obviously, about their experience growing up here. And so I did engage that group, or members of that group, my neighbor included at one point, to try to talk just about what their experiences were, and to build and to sort of have a conversation of, like, I know one of the reasons why you're gathered in the parking lot Saturday noon smoking weed not only because that's a perfectly, wonderful way to spend a Saturday, but because there's almost nothing to do. There's a number of things. So we ended up talking about there's nothing to do for young people. There's nothing to do for young, particularly Black and brown kids. Everything from that to public transportation being a problem. You can't get around this place very easily without a car. So if you don't have there's all kinds of things. So yes, there absolutely was an attempt made on my part, at least some, to engage them beyond just when there's a conflict. And with the one neighbor's son in particular, I would see regularly, and we would, and his little sister had for a time been friends with my daughters. So there was, and I became somewhat friendly with his parents. So there was this.
Right. So
Yeah.
I asked that question.
It didn't work though.
Well, I mean, it didn't work with getting them, for it
Yeah.
not turning into the doors getting kicked in.
Right.
But you did not get the response of "F you, get out of my face."
No.
Right. So that actually was my point.
Hmm.
Because you chose to engage with them as neighbors outside of just engaging with them as the annoyed neighbor who was mad that they were doing this thing that was annoying you, right?
Good
you got
point,
a different response from that group of young people than you would have gotten had you never said a word to them outside of just coming outside and being like, yo, get out from here, you're annoying me. So was the end result what you wanted it to be? No, because other people were engaged and involved, and there's not really much you can do to prevent that part. But there's also no telling, like, could you have made a difference over time if the door didn't get kicked in? Could you have gotten them involved in something that would have helped them to find something to do that wasn't that at 2:00 in the morning? Like there's no way to know. And unfortunately, in most communities, people go straight to dialing 911.
Yeah.
And so that's, so we literally just circle back to exactly what my point is, that there are methods and ways to engage in these situations that do not require bringing someone in who is wearing a costume and holding a gun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with Big Pun here on this one. I would never call the police on music blasters, but it would be nice to get some sleep. Yeah, yeah.
He ain't wrong. He ain't wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to do that. Yeah. Where you kind of have to kind of take, and sometimes you have to take that. You got to be careful. So you got to take that uncomfortable big looping walk around the car. You can't just walk up on a car. So I would do the whole, my head, and take that big loop so they could see me coming, just be like, does it have to be this loud at 3 a.m. in the parking lot? Can you just, it's 4 a.m. I know you just get back from the club because you have left the club at the club. Just one of those things.
Right.
Because it wouldn't be the neighbors so much. It'd be the people dropping off neighbors and hanging out for long conversations and blunts in the parking lot with the car on. And it's like,
yeah, there's other ways, man. There's other ways.
But it's just a little bit of like take that long loop. Even in the suburbs, I'm not walking up on a car at 3 a.m. just
nah, man. Nah.
Turn it down. It's like, hey,
don't do that.
I'm in my bathrobe. I'm tired.
Real quick, we got a celebrity sighting in the chat. Congrats, Ricky.
Oh,
that's
shit.
Dope.
Wait,
that's
we
dope.
got.
That's wonderful.
Shout out to the chat community for supporting that. That's what's up.
That's dope. Yeah, that's dope.
You did. Wait. Lateef, you did. Wait, my bad, Hiram. Hold on. Sorry about that. I just did a wide loop around a car yesterday. Oh, yeah, I hear you. It's real in these streets. Got to take that wide loop.
Oh,
man. So, real quick. So years ago, before, I had a buddy that we would meet for delivery for procurement of certain goods and services that were not at the time legal. and we had agreed to meet at this spot, and I saw their car, and without thinking, I just walked over, and because the plan was always for me to get in their car. I walk over, I open the car, and it's this white dude on his laptop doing his business, his like office business in his car. And it was a real, and I was like, oh, like and I was like, oh, no problem, ended well. But for a moment there, like, that's why a wide loop would have been even good in that moment, even when I expected, something different to be going on, because I was like, my man, you gotta lock your door, because like, this is dangerous for both of us,
Right.
popping it on some stranger like that. I'm like, yo, anyway, so random story. Sorry about that.
All good. All good.
Anticlimactic ending and all of the good things.
All right. So real quick,
Wide
now
loop.
that I remember that you don't see my my stars, so I wanted to. DC Joe Black
Yeah, I don't
shared
see.
this.
Oh, I do
Going
see
on
this
long-
one.
So
My
see,
bad. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on with you, man. Going on a long time. I have two
Oh,
cousins
man.
murdered by the police in Southwest Virginia. So that's wild.
Sorry to hear that. That's
Sorry
crazy.
to hear that. And then
Yeah.
also, Quaker Annika
Oh.
shared, we had a police shooting in my tiny Maine town a few weeks ago. 7 people shot, 2 cops, all because a neighbor with mental illness wasn't cared for and released by ER with nothing.
Wow.
This is,
Damn.
yeah, wild. And this happens a lot, right? I mean, and the response is always going to be based on what you look like when the cops get there, right? Because there could be all, or what you present as when the cops get there, right? Because cops rolling into an affluent neighborhood with this type of situation are probably going to act a little bit different than cops rolling into a poor neighborhood or a neighborhood that's packed with Black and brown people. Like, it's likely to not have the same end result,
No, almost assuredly it will not.
So
yeah. Okay.
all right. So
what else? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So the sheet, the run, my spreadsheet. So let me just let people know what's going on. So I mentioned that I'm part of a planning committee that's putting together a weekend long conference on cop cities. And I was actually only invited because of the spreadsheet that I created for this show that somehow has gone way further in the social media world than I actually anticipated when I created it. But as I was, as I've been going around and kind of doing interviews and presentations and all these things about that map, people would send me notes and say like, yo, there's one here. Did you see this one? Did you know about this one? And so, at the time when I shared the spreadsheet initially on the show, I think it was at like 47, right? Something like that. By the time months down the line, I had gone back and double checked and whatever for the National Lawyers Guild presentation, it was at 69. Since that presentation in February, it's now at 75. At the time, there were 3 states that didn't have anything going. It's now 1 state that doesn't have anything going. I've since added 2 more locations, I think in Minnesota and in New York. And North Dakota is now seeking, I think it's up for bid, although they might have engaged the engineer by now. I think that was supposed to happen at the end of last month. So it's, I believe, approved for construction. They're basically rebuilding the one that they built in 2015, which one has to question, like, why are we rebuilding things already? But okay. And then in Maine, no, not Maine, Vermont, correction, in a tiny town with like, I don't know, 7,000 people. They're building a whole thing that there was a vote for a bond. The bond was voted down by the community because the community couldn't understand why the budget for schools were being cut, but they were asking for them to vote on a bond for building this training facility. But the response is basically like, we'll find other funding, not like, all right, we're gonna drop this project and go do something else, but we'll figure out another means to get the funding. And so this is why I encourage people also to really pay attention to what's happening in their local boards, their local council meetings, their local budgetary meetings, because this is part of this ongoing expansion of the police state across the country. And I keep having conversations where people are saying like, you know, well, is that really a cop city? And, you know, and funny enough, Ricky, I believe, sorry, Ricky, if you don't want me calling this out, but made a suggestion in a meeting that like there be some kind of rubric so people can understand like a differentiation, right? Like not every facility is like Atlanta, right? And some facilities are going to be larger than Atlanta. And for some, you know, for those who have ventured into my map and kind of poked around, some of them were just expansions of a police station that already existed that they decided to make bigger. And it was something that I just looked at in Brockton, Massachusetts. The square footage of the new facility is like 165,000 square feet, right? In like a regular little town in like Massachusetts, right? But it's a 4-story massive building that they're putting there for training. And so, you know, I welcome this ability to have this conversation about, you know, what is what, because Ricky is correct here. There needs to be a differentiation because people have to know, okay, for this type of facility, this is the kind of battle that we can rage, or this thing is already built. So here's something that we can utilize to understand like why, you know, like how this came to be that this place is now being built. And so it's, you know, it's a lot. There's a lot that needs to be identified. There's a lot of money that are going into these things. There's just so much information that I do not have the time as one person to research and figure out. And so there is now a team of people who are engaging in this research and trying to, you know, follow the money and follow the votes and follow all these things so we can try and gain some kind of understanding of like, how does this happen in a town, right?
So what about adding to the rubric the something that involves a percentage of the budget of whatever municipality or state or region is being considered? So something is a cop city if X percent of its budget is used for police of any, police at all, whatever form. If the total budget for the police in a given region crosses X percent of the budget, it's a cop city. Because as I'm listening to you, one of the initial, I guess, sort of visceral reactions I'm having is, yes, and I'm the one main, I'm contradicting myself. I'm always arguing for nuance and whatever, but I'm on some level, I want the conclusion, I want to rig the conclusion to be that everywhere is a cop city.
Yeah. I mean, but you're not, I don't know that you're
regardless
wrong
of the
with that.
specifics of how, whether we define it by square footage or amount of facilities or new facilities or whatever. So, but that's it. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's just my initial reaction to listening to
Yeah,
what
but
you're saying.
you're also, you're not wrong. Like, I guess the grand scheme of it is really trying to figure out what is the best way in order to help to facilitate communities in their response to these things becoming a thing. Right? Like, that in the end, for me, it's mostly about how do you help to get people to engage even in these types of battles, right? And I don't know that my process was the best one of just laying them all out and saying, here's everything that I found, right? But my thought process was, I have to start somewhere with trying to get people to understand how expansive the police state is currently. Because I think people see, and again, it's back to the propaganda. I think people see police as like, it's their town police, or their city police, or their county police, or their sheriffs, whatever. And they're not understanding how there is like this expansive thing behind the scenes that is working together toward the same end of oppressing people. And so all of these things are connected. It's all.
I mean, that's sort of the point, is I'm trying to address what I think is Ricky's response or criticism because of it. So in other words, what I'm trying to convey, at least, is that I wouldn't want people to draw too many distinctions between what's happening in Atlanta or Baltimore or anywhere else, because per se, where I live in Columbia doesn't have a new facility. In other words, I would want where I live to be understood as an extension of a cop city, which is itself an extension of a problem with policing. So to take the exceptionalism or the exceptional nature of a particular cop city and expand it to show that it is not as exceptional, it is itself meant to play a role for the broader policing of everybody here. But I guess, okay, Ricky, we could just, I guess either I don't understand you or you don't understand me, or we just disagree. That's cool. That's fine. But that's at least what I was trying to say and think of as I'm listening to what Renee, or what you're saying.
Yeah.
So.
And this is me vocally struggling with how to move forward, engaging with this issue kind of in general, right? Because I don't know the best method. I just know that I don't think most people are aware, because the amount of people who have responded to me and said, wait a minute, what do you mean there's one close to me? I had no idea, right? And then having that conversation of the lack of awareness of what's happening locally. You know what I mean? We have 13. Ricky, are you saying you want to come and explain it? Do we have enough time, or should we try and circle back and do this another day?
Or both. I don't care.
Right.
I'm fine.
Either or. But somebody did ask very quickly, I'll drop it in the chat for the information on the Brockton facility. There's that. That's the information on the Brockton facility. Oh, I forgot to take that down. And then I'll say, like, you know, so for example, the reason I really just, this is part of my debate, and I literally had an email fight with somebody that you helped start, by the way, about whether or not everything should be called a cop city. And so, you know, I am happy to back down on my labeling if whatever, if we find a better term for it. I'm not as pressed with holding on to something as I am getting information to be presented. But like this place in Vermont, they're about to spend almost $15 million for a town, for a 22,000 square foot building in a town that has less than 7,000 people. Like what in that is about actually like presenting, like it's not about the propaganda that we are presented, that, you know, policing and training, and it's about making people safe and public safety and all these things. And that's the part of it that I really want to engage people in. Like I want people to be engaged in this idea that when these things go up, it literally has nothing to do with creating a safer community in your community. Like it has nothing to do with that. Because there's too many ties to military, too many ties to, you know, international Israel. Like there's just so much else that's behind it. We cannot allow people to be under the impression that this is just about like creating a place where cops can park their cars and have a place to meet and work out and right? Like it's not about that.
Well, as Ricky says, if you're in DC, come out at 5 p.m. Eastern to the New York Ave Presbyterian Church. She will be speaking along with BAP outside as they resist #ResistNATO, which is the global cop city structure, the global, the internationalization of cop cities.
Because
so
the conversation, these conversations have to happen. And
but hydrate, because they said it's a heat advisory. I see a heat warning on my TV.
I don't even listen. My dog, somebody else gonna have to do it because I am not. It's hot. We went out there last night. We went for a family walk, and I thought I was gonna pass out from the humidity. It's so hot outside.
So it's funny you said that. We took our dog for a late walk last night, and I barely made it back. I thought for a minute I was about to have to call Renee and say we about to. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. I had to break my rule about eating. I had to eat some pears. I was like, man, I'm not gonna make it. Hydrate, get your fruit. But shout out to everybody doing that work, and you know, but yeah,
no doubt. It's a lot, man. It's a lot. And, you know, when I am able, I will share the new sheet that I feel like is just growing. It's like gremlins. Every time I turn around, it's expanding, and I don't really have a good, I got nothing. I don't have a good reason for why this is not correction. I know in my mind, I know why it's happening. It is happening because there has to be a means to keep people under control. So you know, this is the choice, right? It's not to give resources. The choice is to give punishment and oppression. You know, resources will work better in my opinion, but you know, who am I? but I just, I think it's important for us all to be aware. And once I am able, I will share the new spreadsheet. And I will see if I can talk somebody from this research group to come on, because, I'm like a rabbit hole person. I just found this stuff because I'm nosy. But I've actually become engaged with some folks who are real researchers. And what I'd love to do is provide people with simple resources that they can use in their own communities to learn about the things. So to figure out, like, how did this policy happen, and how did this thing become a thing, and where did they find the money from, and how do these bonds work, and how does it affect the community when they put these bonds in place? Because I don't think people understand, like, they do these bonds and your city's in debt to whoever the bond is for like, 30, 50 years, right? And we're doing this for people in costumes and guns instead of, I don't know, resources. Why? But that's just me.
Well, look, as we get ready to wrap up and hydrate and stretch for warrior class, I do want to invite Hiram. If Hiram is still in the chat, please tap into our ongoing debate with the football crew around athletics and soccer, athletes and soccer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. That has become an ongoing off-air vicious debate. But anyway, sorry for that one as well. That little detour. I just saw another message. It's off the hook.
Yeah,
it's off the hook. It's not about knowing anything about soccer. It's about where the best athletes are. And yeah, it's a little out of hand. But Renee, anything you want to let us know? Anything we need to be aware of before we I don't know, any prep for next week or anything else?
No, I actually don't have I don't think we have a thing for next week yet.
We don't have a plan.
We do not have a plan yet. I did invite Jordan Sheridan to come on. He's got that book that's being released next month
about the Flint water crisis.
About the Flint water crisis, and there's a documentary, and so I invited him to join us when he was able. So he's checking his calendar. I do really want us to watch that Reimagining Safety thing. So let me circle back and figure out how we can make that happen.
Didn't I? He made it available. Didn't I see it? He make it available for me to see?
You got it.
I did see it.
You did. You watched it on Prime.
Yeah.
It's on Prime if folks,
right.
are going to pay for it. But I was thinking we could try and figure some way out for our folks to watch it without having to participate in Amazon's foolishness, if possible.
If he's definitely let us know.
He's willing. We got to figure it out. There's got to
be a way to. Yeah, maybe. I mean, we could. I don't know how. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm sure there's. Librarian is saying stream it on Discord. I was thinking more of Patreon to do a Patreon special with it, but whatever he and you all just I'm down with it. Whatever, or maybe split it, do like, I don't know, screen it somewhere and then do the Q&A somewhere else, like the post discussion somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, okay. We can.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Do some sort of I don't know.
All right, we'll figure it out. Yeah. But you need to stretch. I can see you already.
Definitely need to stretch. Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess over here. But yeah, big shout out to you, Renee, and all the remixers for coming through today. Definitely shout out to the Warrior Class crew coming up next Sundays with Ear Doctor. I'm trying to set up now an interview with Leonard Peltier's lawyer for Monday morning. So just make sure you all have the bell rung and are subscribed and supporting the Patreon and sharing this and commenting and doing all the things to support the show and the platform.
When do we get out of YouTube jail?
August 7th. Still got a whole month from tomorrow to go. A whole month. Yeah, that 90-day joint.
Oof.
And all I can say is I know we have rules. I just one day when I want the full story to come out, and I just want to be a part of the telling of the story. But yeah, that's how I feel.
Okay.
The story has not yet been told.
It has not yet been told. But my mother asked, she was like, when does this YouTube thing end? And I was like, that's a really good question. I will ask Jab.
Big shout out to your moms. And yeah, it's a see, look at Ricky.
Yeah,
See, yelling at. I didn't even say nothing. I just said I want it to be said. That's it. I'm disciplined. I just said I wanted to be told. I didn't say nothing. Discipline. But yeah, August 7th, we'll be back. And but I really do like I know we're working on it and we will be doing more for Patreon specifically, but I do like this whole thing is, you know, move your membership to a Patreon subscription instead.
Yeah.
And even when we're out of the wilderness. But yeah, so we're almost there. We're almost there. We'll get there. We're almost there. But unlike Moses, we all will get there with the people.
I can't stand
you. All right.
All right, people.
Big shout out. Thanks again. And we will see everybody back again next week with more Saturday with Renee.